The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Tell Us Why, a podcast for the financial freedom community. If you're looking to succeed in your quest for financial freedom, make sure you join us every week as we, along with our guests, discuss different stories of success, how they were achieved, and how you can do the same. And of course, we ask them to tell us why. Here are your hosts, Jack and Mike.
Welcome to the Tell Us Why podcast. I'm your host, Michael Ketchen. Without Jack today, unfortunately, Jack had a family emergency at a passing. We got a great co-host stepping in, though, Mr. Matthew Hitchcock returning. How you doing?
Excited to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you, and we're even more excited about the guest we have today.
I'm excited about this guest, too.
It's going to be great. We have with us today Travis Zappia. Travis is the Young Retiree By 33 real estate investor. He'll be on to discuss his short-term rental properties and his goals and why it was important to kind of frame his business as we get into his Airbnb rentals. And he also has a background in industrial engineering, so I'll be curious how he transitions between the two.
For sure.
Before we do that, Matt, what do you got going on in the business today?
I had an interesting thing that happened actually this week. I had a girl that showed up to an apartment that I have available, and she was very upfront with me. She said she's been striking out a lot with getting an apartment because of her background. She has a less than ideal history. So we started talking, had a good conversation. So instead of me just shutting her down initially, which is clearly what a lot of other landlords did, I opened up, listened to her. And one of the things she proposed was the fact that she's in a transitional process with her housing.
Okay.
And she's trying to get into her own place now. She actually has a representative that'll come out twice a month and inspect the unit and look into it. So I said, well, I'm getting a free inspection on my unit 2 times a month. I'll take that all day. And they're going to help. Yeah, of course. And because of her character, I'm going to give her a shot. And also the organization's going to help a little bit with some of the funding. So I think it's going to be a win-win. It could backfire, but you never know. You got to take those chances sometimes. So.
I think that's great. And I think we need more of that in this industry to even help. You know, not all landlords are these evil people, Scrooge McDucks.
Exactly.
So that's awesome. And yeah, like I said, we're still kind of hammering away 2022 goals, bunch of refis going on right now, trying to push through. But love hearing that. Lucky to have you doing that stuff with the business and absolutely crushing it. But with that, like I said, we got a great guest today, and I can't wait to dive in. So without waiting any further, let's hear what this week's brought to us by, and then let's bring in Travis.
Are you sick of being treated like just another number by large insurance companies? Do you want a more personalized experience with somebody that you can trust? With Keith Monteith, that's exactly what you'll get. Keith is an experienced professional who can design an insurance plan tailored to fit your specific needs. With access to over 30 insurance carriers, Keith is able to shop numerous markets to find a price that works for you. So if you want an insurance agent that you can rely on and one that has your best interests at heart, then call or text Keith today on 978-241-2363. That's 978-241-2363. Keith Monty. He'll get you covered.
All right, Travis, the Young Retiree By 33, is a fire advocate who has started to get into real estate investing in the last 3 years. He purchased his first house hack in 2016 and decided to rent out by the bedroom on Airbnb. Talk about that. He has since purchased 4 additional properties. He focuses solely on short-term rentals. In 2020, even during COVID, he grossed $111,000 in short-term rental income through Airbnb. In 2021, he grossed $388,000 and ended up netting $110K. With his industrial engineering background, he has developed a set of systems to help him manage 5 short-term rentals, all from his phone. He even wrote a guide outlining exactly how he's able to manage his 6 short-term rentals, all while he has a full-time job. Travis, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I'm pretty excited. A lot to unpack right there. I mean, to dive right into it. Where are you at today in the business, and what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just continuing to really focus right now on growth mode and adding additional properties. Added 2 short-term rental properties last year, added another property under management that I'm managing for an investor in December of last year. And then I'm continuing to grow both the management side of the business as well as my own portfolio, because the long-term goal and really why I got into this was to be able to create generational wealth for the long term.
I like it. Great answer. And with that, just out of curiosity, those 2 you added, different markets, same markets, where are you at with those?
Yeah, same market. So last year, the two that I added were both in the Smoky Mountains. It's a really hot market and very, very short-term rental friendly as far as being not so seasonal, very year-round, and a lot of demand in that area. The two additional properties, one that I added on in December under management, and the one that I am adding actually next week, I'm going back out to the Smokies to take over another property for an investor. Are all in the Smoky Mountains. So right now, really focused around Smokies, Orlando, Kissimmee area, around Disney, and then I'm actually in a condo that I manage for a friend's family in Panama City Beach right now.
Oh, awesome.
Now, Travis, when you got into this, it says you started out house hacking, and I myself started out house hacking, getting into real estate as well, except I didn't have any aspirations really of creating an empire. I essentially didn't want to pay to live, and that was the extent of it, and I didn't think anything else of it. So can you talk us through your process in getting even into this with the house hack? Did you read any books? Did you listen to any mentors, those types of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So it all started from reading a book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I actually was working, and it's a very common story that you'll hear a lot of people that get into real estate. But I had a coworker who told me I should read this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. I pretty much told him to go eat rocks. I'm not a reader. I don't read. That doesn't interest me.
Same.
Are you and Matt the same person? I mean, this is literally, I can't get it. Yeah. Everything's got to be audio. So yeah, that's awesome.
Environment moves too quick these days.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But yeah, I pretty much told him thanks, but no thanks. And then he told me, no, you really got to read this book and sit down and you're just going to hear a different mindset and just kind of see how it resonates with you. And how it resonated with me was along the lines of what you were saying, in the sense of I all of a sudden realized that there was a different world out there of people that were working for themselves and not for others, for creating long-term generational wealth. And also really understanding the difference between assets and liabilities and how that works and like how that game's played out. Because a lot of people are just never taught that at all in their life. So from that, I knew at that point I no longer wanted to rent. I wanted to buy and own. And I was renting at that time where I was living up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania for work. I just got a promotion. I was going to be moving down to Orlando. I knew I didn't want to rent anymore, so I was going to be purchasing a house. I had no intent of house hacking, had no idea what house hacking even was. I just knew that a $1,600 mortgage that I owned hopefully was going to be better than a $1,300 a month rent. And I really ended up stumbling into house hacking because I had a buddy of mine from the Northeast that wanted to move down to Orlando for a 4-month stint to play on a professional tennis tour. And he asked if he could rent out one of the bedrooms. I had purchased a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom property. I was living in the master. The other 2 bedrooms were empty. We ended up working out like $500 a month is what he was going to pay me. I thought I was a genius because I was like, man, I'm renting out this bedroom. He's paying a third of my mortgage. I'm like, nobody has ever done this. Nobody's heard of this.
I'm changing the world.
And then I started getting into bigger pockets and reading and listening to all the podcasts. And then finally figuring out that like, hey, this is a great way to really start into the real estate game.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And staying with that, so I'm guessing the social media handle is the Young Retiree by 33. I don't think that's your last name, so I know I'm gonna go with that. Does that kind of tie into your why? Is that where you're at? Talk to us a little bit about that handle and what that means to you and how that all ties together in this.
Yeah, absolutely. So at first it was something that was both a realistic target to retire. And I initially found the FIRE movement. And I think the FIRE movement is a great concept, but I'm not a huge fan of it for a couple of reasons. And the main one being I never want to retire. The goal isn't for me to retire and end up going to a beach and drink pina coladas for the rest of my life. Like I want the ability for optional retirement and to be able to really do what I want, when I want, wherever I want. I'm still going to want to have challenges and things that I am going to be working on, to whether that's growing my portfolio or business ventures that I'm going to go into in the future. Really the main focus has been around how do I create income that is not through my W-2 that will allow me to leave the W-2 and then really get to work on the passion projects that I want for the long term, because I don't enjoy necessarily waking up and having to report to somebody else and have a boss that I have to please. I want to be able to be my own boss and have my business that is running and generating cash flow. while I'm also working on other things that I'm passionate about for the long term. So that's really been the focus. The handle is really like how I created it and why I created it was really around something that was going to sound catchy, because the Young Retiree by 33 sounded catchy. And it just so happened that it also was something that is realistic and something that it's also a conversation starter for a lot of people. When I talk to cleaners or whatever, when I go into a new market and they ask for my email, I tell them my email and they're like, oh, the whole backstory of like, oh, are you 33 yet? Are you tired? Talk to me about that. So it's kind of a cool conversation started too in various aspects.
Well, it's almost like you put a goal out there into the world as well. Just not even
Accountability piece.
almost like you're writing it down on a piece of paper, but you're saying that this is your plan out to the whole social world. I think that's awesome. So
yeah, exactly.
And staying with that, looking at it, you're still currently doing this with a W-2 job, correct?
100%. Yeah, I manage 6 right now. We'll have a 7th coming online next week, and all while working a full-time W-2.
Wow. Now, how, obviously, you know, we're obviously multifamily guys as well, and we're big on systems. I'd be really curious because we can always get some actionable tips.
Yeah.
How are you managing these right now? What are you using? Does your engineering background help translate to that at all?
Absolutely. Like in my day job and kind of what I went to school for really was trying to figure out what's the most efficient and effective way to do things, whether it's to reduce costs, increase revenue, streamline processes. And with kind of the background that I have, I've been really diligent in focusing around what systems and processes can I put in place in my business, as well as what softwares and technologies can I leverage that other people that are really, really intelligent and are really good coders and programmers, stuff that they use, how can I leverage that to be able to reduce the amount of time that I have to work in my business so I can really focus on long-term, like where I want my business to go from a short-term rental standpoint, as well as be able to reduce the amount of time that I'm taking away from my W-2 in current state. So like with industrial engineering background, it's constantly refining and tuning my systems and processes to be able to reduce the overall amount of time that I have to personally be working in the business so I can focus my time elsewhere, whether it's growth or continuing to focus and do the W-2 at least for the interim while I'm still looking to qualify for loans and those types of things.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's right up the alley.
Is there for you trying to make these systems, is there a specific application that you gravitate towards them all? Obviously, you have your properties on different platforms such as Airbnb and VRBO and those types of things, but is there a certain application that you seem to gravitate towards that seems to really nail down your business, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest one that I leverage is a lot for guest communication and messaging, and that one is called Hospitable. It used to be called SmartBnB. It's now called Hospitable, and that handles pretty much 95% of all of my guest communication. I have all of my my messaging sequences set up for each individual property. It takes a little bit of time to like understand what messaging sequences that you need to set up, but once you understand and have those templates already created, it's really a plug and play for any new property that you onboard. And that's saved me hours and hours of time as far as managing the guest communication. They also have like smart AI that can recognize questions, and automatically you can set up responses for common questions that guests might potentially ask. So that's been a huge time saver in that regard. And then for maximizing revenue, I use a software called Price Labs, and that really helps understand demand data for short-term rentals for the different markets that I'm in. I set up my inputs, I set up my seasons. Within that, there's some fine-tuning that you can do to maximize overall revenue that you can generate for your short-term rental property. But that's been a great tool to use. So I'm not having to constantly go in and update pricing and understand for a market when are certain events happening in that area. So that's been a great tool to use to maximize overall revenue generation.
Awesome. Staying with that lens, I now heard you mention too, so you own and operate some that you're the owner operator on. You also are now managing as well. So you're even finding other revenue streams within this business. You want to touch on that real quick if you can, because that's pretty cool to know you're diversifying within the field.
Yeah, absolutely. It was something that my portfolio is really for that long-term generational wealth, and then adding the component of management, because I have my systems and processes already set up and in place in these markets. Onboarding new clients is exactly what you're saying. It's a great additional revenue stream to add to the belt. And it allows me to really figure out if that's something like how much I want to scale that. Yep. And to be able to use that cash flow to then pump back into my business of buying more properties for the long term. So it's been something that honestly, if it wasn't for COVID, I would have never got into management or thought of getting into management, because my previous job, I was traveling pretty much 24/7. So like going to a property and setting up a property was something that was super intimidating if it wasn't something that I was owning myself. But when COVID hit, travel shut down. Actually, this condo that I'm in right now in Panama City Beach is the condo that I had a friend's family reach out to me saying, hey, we know, because you talk about your short-term rentals on your Instagram, we know you do this. We're not happy with our short-term rental manager. Would you want to come check out the property and see if you want to take it over? And at that point, it was just like a super interesting, unique opportunity that I was like, if they're asking and I continue to do this, I continue talking about it, I continue buying properties, I wonder what it could look like long-term. And actually the two additional properties that I have under management, one that started last month, the next one starting next week, are also people that just reached out to me through Instagram, whether they're investors That's or awesome. Not happy with their property manager that they currently have. They just reached out, and now I'm realizing that like it's a very smart thing to continue to grow for the long term.
What are the odds that somebody wouldn't like their property manager? Right?
That's all we buy from. And what's really cool, and I want everyone in the Tell Us Why community to go back and unpackage multiple things here, right? So Travis gets a catchy name, becomes an authority in the space, it generates business. He starts with the end in mind. He clearly defines his goals. He works backwards. Now, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, not only is he getting extra revenue from the management side of it, he's now also created another LLC, another asset that he can sell and scale a business, multiple exit strategies. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to unpack right there. That's really impressive, Travis, which leads to the next thing that I think everyone's going to ask. As I mentioned, we own and operate a couple as well. Everyone wants to know, how are you finding markets? Where are you finding opportunity today? What kind of tips and tricks do you have on that for the community?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a lot to unpack just because there's so many markets that are really, really interesting and unique. What I look for to start is asking myself, what are markets that I like to travel to, or what are areas I like to travel to? That's always the first question I like to ask myself when I'm looking at new markets. And the main reason why is because a super unique thing about short-term rentals is you have the ability to go vacation at your property. Yes, and I think you should use that if you're going to get into the short-term rental business. It's a very unique perk of short-term rentals. It's not like you can go to your long-term rental and stay there for a couple of weeks. Like, that's probably not happening. So the first thing I always ask is like, where do I like to vacation to? Once I like figure out, okay, here are the different areas that I want to go to or travel to, then it's okay, are they short-term rental friendly? Are there laws in place at the county level, city level, that already regulate short-term rentals? Because in my opinion, you want to make sure that you're only going into markets that have laws established and it has a lot of competition from a short-term rental market standpoint. I love competition because that means that if there's a lot of people in that market, then it's probably short-term rental friendly. You still want to do your research and make sure that that's the case, both at the county level and if there's any HOAs and those types of things. You want to make sure you understand the minimum lease requirements if you're getting into certain neighborhoods. So you want to do your research. But those are the things that I really start with to try to understand, is this a market that I want to go into? And then it's all about analyzing the numbers and seeing if it makes sense from a financial standpoint if you're going to make that investment. But it's really hard to say, hey, this market in particular is like one that is really, really good, because everything's so individualized and unique to not only like what are you looking for if you are investing in this? Are you looking for straight cash flow? Are you looking to go to buy a place where you like to vacation and you're okay with it breaking even and you're happy with that? So it really kind of depends on what you're specifically looking for from the property that you're looking to get.
Yeah,
That's great tips.
great.
Yeah.
We'll go back and listen to that because those are all really, really, really good tips. Especially as you're breaking into this. All right, so we also have on here because another industry me and Matt have always been interested. You're the first guy we have on with this. Something about a bar in Vegas. What's going on with that? Talk about that real quick.
Yeah, so my cousin owns and operates high-end bars, and he actually just got bought out from the first bar business that he created. He essentially creates a business that then has like 4 or 5 different concepts underneath it. And the newest concept that he has right now is called Money Baby. The Virgin bought out the Hard Rock in Vegas, and he is well connected in that industry. Went and pitched the CEO of the hotel, the Virgin Hotel in Vegas, and they love the concept. It's a high-end sports bar that turns into a nightclub at night, and it's like 5,000 square feet combination of 15,000 square feet combination inside outside. And the executive chef is actually Bo Mack, who is on the Food Network and a really good personality and has amazing food. So it's something that I've been in a super fortunate and unique situation where now I can start, as well as continuing to build my short-term rental stuff. I can start to play and dabble into some cool ventures like that.
Another revenue stream.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's definitely, that's right up there.
Yeah, that's the goal for us. Again, I can't speak for Mike, but we've talked about this ad nauseum. Having our real estate, relying on that, and now you can venture off into some other avenues and get creative and find out other things that you like that you might not even knew you had an interest
All
in.
assets, just like Rich poured at. So, which is actually a perfect transition. What is one book or resource you would recommend to the Tell Us Why community?
Yeah, the book that I would recommend that I found a ton of value from is The One Thing by Gary Keller.
Yep.
I think a lot of times what ends up happening with people is there's so much information and you're getting like pinged from so many different things that you can have this constant squirrel syndrome of like, hey, I'm looking at this thing and then I hear somebody talk about one other thing and I need to go look at that. Like you really got to block out the distractions and really focus on one thing at a time. The more that you're able to do that, and the book lays out some really, really great ways of doing that. The more you're able to do that, the more you're really going to be able to accelerate achieving the goals, whatever goals it is that you set for yourself, whether it's quarterly, yearly, monthly. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a really, really good tactical book that gives great actionable things for you to be able to reach whatever it is that you're trying to reach.
Yeah, it's a great book. Read it. It came highly recommended, and I saw why the hype was there. It was very good, especially for us as all entrepreneurs. We tend to shiny object syndrome is the constant fight. All right, so we are going to transition to the part of the show with every guest. We asked the big three. We're going to put you on the hot seat. But first, before we do that, we should hear from the great folks at QS Lending.
It's now time for the Big Three segment, brought to you by QS Private Lending. Are you looking to finance your next deal quickly and reliably with less hassle and paperwork? QS Private Lending is one of the oldest and largest hard money lenders to real estate investors in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Our quick and simple short-term loans require no appraisals and have enabled hundreds of builders and investors to profitably acquire and renovate thousands of residential and commercial properties. To experience the QS difference for yourself, call or text Luke Conroy today at 315-323-0250. That's 315-323-0250. QS Private Lending.
All right, Travis, I hope you're ready. Time to feel the heat, all right? And you're an engineer, so I don't know if your mother's going to watch this or not, so you better be careful. Don't get in trouble with the parents. All right, the first question we ask every guest. In your opinion, is college worth it?
That's a good question. I think it depends. I think there's a lot of benefits of going to college. At the same time, there's a lot of benefits of getting real world experience and actually getting out there, getting your hands dirty. I think if you are going to college for a degree that is not going to be very value add in the long term of getting you a good job, I don't think it's worth it. You're better off going and getting real world experience doing something else and doing just internship routes. But if you're getting a technical degree and you want to do something like becoming a doctor, like you have to go through and do that. So it really just depends on what you want to do from a long-term standpoint.
Great answer.
Great answer. What piece of actionable advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Yeah, I would have bought a house hack when I went to college, or told my parents to buy a house hack or buy a house so I can get it rented out. That's like, I think that it's so, a lot of people talk about house hacking and how life changing it is. I think if I were to go start over and do it again, I would have house hacked or asked my parents to buy a house or try to get me to qualify for a loan coming out of high school and going to college. So that's the actionable advice that I would give. And you're always going to have demand if it's in the right market for colleges.
That's a great
Awesome.
answer. It's such a cheat code too. We take it for granted that we wish. I mean, same thing here. All right. What is one thing you would want your 90-year-old self to say to you?
Ooh, that all of the sacrifices made early on were exponentially worth it for the life that you were able to live from 30 on.
That is so
That's a
good.
good
You are
answer.
such an engineer too. You could just, it's like, it's like, got it. The guy's sharp. This is a sharp guy. He's like right on it. Like, I like that. That is awesome. All right, Travis, before we let you go, is there anything you'd like to tell the Tell Us Why community?
No, I think it's important, especially like we're at the new year now. I think it's important to always make sure that you're going back and looking at goals and revising goals as your life changes and circumstances change. Mm-hmm. So just if there's one thing and kind of one thing I can say to anybody is don't be afraid to take a risk. You're never going to know until you do. So you have to go and take action and learn from your mistakes. And don't think that the first thing and the first deal or whatever it is that you're doing, don't think that first one that you do has to be a home run. The first one is meant to set yourself up for the next one and the next one and the next one down the road. So don't worry about getting a home run on your first deal or whatever it might be. Take the leap, take action, learn from whatever it is that you need to learn from so that you're setting yourself up for the long term.
That's incredible. Where can people learn more about you, get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is through my Instagram at the Young Retiree By 33.
That's awesome. All right, Matt, where can people learn more about Tell Us Why and get in touch with us?
Of course, you can check out the website, www.telluswhypodcast.com. Also, we're anywhere on social media, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, we're pretty much there.
And one of these days, Jack will get the TikTok set up. I promise you.
Is he going to be in the? Is he going to go into the metaverse? By the time you get to the TikTok, the metaverse.
The metaverse will be all right. We're going to need to Tell Us Why in the metaverse. Or we record most Wednesdays at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe in Salem. Come on down, check us out. The quote of the week: "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans." John Lennon. Travis, thank you again for being here. And like I said, we'll check us out next week. And Matt, until then,
bet on yourself.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.